Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, this is a really great honor to have a second time opportunity to deliver my speech or thoughts on Bengali Forum and especially in this beautiful country, Bangladesh, which is facing with challenges like every country in the world nowadays, but specifically Bangladesh because of geostrategical position, because of the new trends in the global arena, because many specific challenges we are facing with together, and finally, because of potential of this country. You have a huge population, you have a very young population, and every country in the world, in accordance with the scientific researches, has the same distribution of the intelligence. Every country has 5% very intelligent people, 2% geniuses, which means 200 million people. You have a lot of very talented people. You have a much better possibilities and the chances for the future to develop your own country if you are managing that resource, human resource, in a proper way. This is up to your government and your elite. Dear friends, today is obvious that the new world order will be established as a consequence of the series of interconnected regional wars. This is not about war in Ukraine. This is about today, new war, or I hope very limited war in Israel. But that was frozen conflict that can explode every day. A few weeks ago, we had such conflict in Serbia, in Serbian province Kosovo. Maybe you heard about that. That was very short conflict, but that can also explode whenever you want. We are talking about potential of the global conflict between the United States and China. But there are so many places all around the world that can be triggered immediately and transformed in the violence and war. Wars in Iraq, Syria, Libya, Ukraine, and the new balance of power and the influence in the global economy after the economic boost of China and now India. The confrontation of the great powers in the construction of the global infrastructural economic corridors, the huge influence of high technologies, artificial intelligence, the neuroscience, on the accelerated development and dominance of certain countries, and the creation of the new military alliances. This is an atmosphere in which we are living nowadays. This is an atmosphere which is bringing all of us together to think about potential development of that circumstances. Just 5 years ago, the world looked different, and it was almost impossible to predict this development of global politics. The fateful questions arises as to what the world will look like in 5 years and what will happen in the immediate future that we cannot predict today. A few days ago, I was participating in the forum that was event aside of United Nations General Assembly in New York in a Harvard Club with two prominent Israeli politicians, Tzipi Livni and Ehud Barak. And we talked about global conflicts and potential, and also about Middle East. No one of us even mentioned conflict that is happening today. Which conflict we are going to witness tomorrow? What is going to be after tomorrow? What is going to be in next 5 years? How the world is going to look like after 5 or 10 years? Nowadays, this is very specific characteristics of the world nowadays. We are living in totally unpredictable world. What is the duty of science, social and political science? To understand and to predict processes. We are able to do that in physics, in chemistry, in biology, but not in politics. This is a problem, which means we need more expertise in politics. We need more cooperation. But coming back to the period during the COVID influence and the viruses, how the world was looking like in that time, whether we had a cooperation between scientific institutions in order to find a reaction and a medical reaction on crises we've been facing with, or we had a brutal competition. Vaccines. That was looking like a brutal competition, even though the world was in a very dangerous situation. Whole mankind. We don't have to remind ourselves about similar crises that happened at the beginning of the 20th century, when we lost millions and millions of people. This time also we lost a lot of human lives. But we didn't have a cooperation between scientific institutions in India, in China, in the United States, Great Britain, Russia. We had a competition between them. Even after they discovered in a very short period of time vaccines, in the media we had a war against each other. They were attacking on different countries which vaccine is a good, which vaccine is not good. That was kind of competition in terms of international credibility between main powers. But this is bringing all of us in an extremely difficult situation. Are we going to live in the world without viruses? No way. Is it going to happen once again in the future? For sure. Are we prepared better in comparison with the previous time for such a situation? No. Do we have institutions that are cooperating together on solving common problem for the people from Bangladesh, from Serbia, Russia, United States, Mali? No. Do we have a more multilateral cooperation nowadays than before? No. Do we have a more credibility of United Nations than 10, 15, 20 years ago or after the Second World War? No. Do we need more cooperation between countries and specifically in multilateral institutions? Yes. Without such a cooperation, we cannot be able even to prevent and to solve problems we are facing with, in terms of viruses, in terms of conflicts and the wars, in terms of legitimate way of finding solution for the conflicting interests that are also characterizing the world nowadays and the history of the mankind. Dear friends, we are witnessing so many alliances nowadays, which is, for some people without political experience, good sign. Alliances, people are cooperating to each other. We can see kind of alliances that are not anymore focused on the traditional conflicting zone. For example, Atlantic area. NATO, you know, is focused on the Atlantic area, NATO. The name is clarifying the focus of the NATO. That was a conflict between the Western world, United States and their alliance, and USSR and their alliance. Nowadays, we have a new dimension of that traditional conflict from the Cold War, which is conflict between the United States and their alliance in the NATO and Russia. But in the meantime, even though war in Ukraine is bringing tragic events and so many casualties, and every normal person in the world has to be very sad because of what happened, we have a transformation and transition of conflict, not only from the Atlantic area to the Ukraine, but also to the Pacific. Nowadays, we are talking about possible conflict between the United States and China, which can destroy the whole world. This is an extremely dangerous situation, but we are witnessing so many alliances nowadays. We can talk about Quad, we can talk about AUKUS. We see that nowadays there are some military strategic thinkers are bringing also in that alliance South Korea and other countries. not only Australia, United States, Japan. We can see that after that reaction of China is to make kind of alliance with Northern Korea and Russia. We see that India is at the same time trying to handle that situation in a proper way, being in some alliances with one type of countries and the specific alliances in economic sphere, in the BRICS and in the Quad at the same time. And that situation is, to me, very similar to the situation we've been facing with before Second World War. Maybe we are living in the world, in the room where the young people are only hearing what we are talking right now. But before Second World War, we've been witnessing so many alliances. Some alliances were created overnight. Some alliances disappeared overnight. But the outcome of that kind of political and social and economic and security atmosphere was the Second World War. I hope that what we are witnessing nowadays is not bringing us in the new World War. But we can be pretty sure that this situation is not normal. This situation is very dangerous, and this situation is a crystal clear evidence that in the world we are facing with a huge challenge and a huge problem. Dear friends, my friend Ziller was asking me to deliver kind of thoughts and speech, 10, 20 minutes. And I wanted only to summarize what we've been talking about in the past 24 hours. Because this kind of conferences are very helpful, I think, crucially important regarding the world nowadays. If we are organizing such a conferences in Bangladesh, in India, in other countries, I hope one day in Iran, in Saudi Arabia, in China, we can share views and we can be helpful to our governments and the political structure to implement kind of views and strategic thoughts in terms of preventing problems and preventing conflicts. Otherwise, we are going to be so far from each other. Whenever you are facing with a kind of problems by being far, being yourself far from the problem, you are going to be attacked by this problem after tomorrow. This is very bad strategy. At the same time, I'm looking at the Western world nowadays, and everyone in the Western world is attacking on Russia because of war in Ukraine. With that, I can understand. This is totally unacceptable, what Russia is doing right now in Ukraine. But at the same time, I don't see so many people that are thinking what was before conflict started to be reality. Are there some reasons for such reaction of Russia? Which is, from my point of view, nowadays totally unacceptable. But at the same time, in terms of strategical point of view, what is going to be final outcome of that war? Is Russia going to be closer or farther to the Western world? If Russia is going to be very far from the Western world, Russia is going to be in the hands of China. If China is going to have a Russia in their own hands, what is going to be final outcome of that? China is going to take a totally different geostrategical position, and that can create new problems and new tensions in the world. I think without having strategy to closely cooperate to each other, to have open door for dialogue, for such conferences and political dialogue, we are going to be even more dangerous and more dangerous world in the future. In that respect, I think one of the key issues the world nowadays is facing with is the prevention of conflicts. We have last year I said, we have a Nobel Prize for Peace, you know. Those award is usually for someone who was making peace after war. But we don't have an award for someone who is going to prevent war, which is much more important. Prevention of war is going to save human beings, their lives, tragic destruction. But we have to think about that. This is why I think United Nations is the only multilateral institution in which we can be focused on prevention of war. But we need the political and scientific expertise in prevention of conflicts and war. We have to be able to understand what's going on. We have to understand what about societies, different countries, what about different interests, what about dispute of interest we are facing with in the world nowadays. This is something that I'm insisting on always when I'm participating on different forums. Nowadays in Bangladesh, in Dhaka. A few days ago, I was doing that in New York. A few days ago, before that, I was doing that in Baku, in Azerbaijan, in Beijing. And I think this is extremely important. But I don't see positive outcome of that thoughts. And I don't see that the world, and especially multilateral institutions, are going to be enriched by the people that are able to understand potential conflicts. Nowadays in Dhaka, here we have only few politicians. I'm one of them. Maybe this is good, maybe this is bad. Politicians are also human beings, you know. Without politicians, you cannot solve problems. And not only scientists, diplomats, and the students can analyze situation and can identify the problems we are facing with. Without politicians, we cannot do that. Politicians are also human beings, but with specific characteristics. And I think we have to think about that. This is very, very important. Without influence on politicians, there is no chance to create a better world nowadays. But I think that we have to use every possible forum, like Bengali Forum, and to have such a coordination between different forums from all around the world to create a specific network that can create global influence on politics in different countries. Of course, that I'm not naive. I've been president of Serbia, Minister of Defense, and I perfectly understand what is the role and duty of the politicians when you have to serve to your constitution and your people, your electorate. But at the same time, if you are only focused on that, but not being focused on the global interests, you are not going to be really statesmen, and you are not going to deliver something which is necessarily for the human beings and the mankind. You are going to be only specifically focused on only your own country. That kind of attitude and methodology in politics is bringing us to the new conflicts. And this is a problem. You have to have a wider perspective, wider picture. Without that, you cannot be the man who can work on reconciliation, on establishing sustainable peace, and developing of your own country and the neighboring countries and the whole world. This is why I think that such forums are very, very important. And my suggestion to the authorities of these countries to take this into the consideration. This is very, very important. And this is why I would like to thank to organizers, our friends here, because of organizing such event. This is really very brave and very important for the Bangladesh, for young people, new generation, and also for the government of this country. This is my message to my colleagues in the government of Bangladesh. My friends, I'm going to finish my thoughts with the challenges I see as a crucial nowadays. After prevention, I see a challenge which is very dangerous, and we can witness that every day. This is the double standards, which is functioning in a global arena almost on a daily basis. I mean, you can see one big power is criticizing the other big power because they are not respecting rules. But this big power didn't respect rules only 10 years ago, such rules, their own rules. This is politics of double standards. United States, you know, I'm coming from Serbia. I mean, I was a member of opposition against Milosevic in 1990s. We've been fighting on the street with the power of Serbia in that time. We were against war, but finally we were bombed by the NATO without permission of Security Council of United Nations. This is not respecting of the rules, the common rules. That was violation of the international law. But at the same time, we've been fighting Milosevic on the streets, but with the NATO on the sky. That was totally unsustainable situation, a very dangerous situation for us. But after that, the Western world was violating also international law by recognizing independence of our province, Kosovo. Why I'm saying this? Because I'm not crying right now, but I'm reminding ourselves. That was the first sentence of Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin on the meeting with Mr. Gutierrez, Secretary General of the United Nations, when he said, after criticism that came from the United Nations because he recognized Lugansk and Donetsk and other provinces of Ukraine as independent entities, and finally he integrated them in the US, in the Russia. He said, if that was possible with the Kosovo in Serbia, this is right now possible with Donetsk and Lugansk in Ukraine. I'm talking about politics of double standards. We have to understand which kind of standards we are implementing nowadays. This is why New World Orders is about not who is going to have supremacy, but who is going to define really standards that are going to be implemented everywhere and that we can respect everywhere, in every point of the earth in the future. This is why New World Orders are one of the most important spheres which have to think together and how to implement that, how to analyze that, and how to make new prevention on possible conflicts. If we are going to have a new world order that are not in accordance with the justice, that are not in accordance with the common interest, we are going to create, to open new Pandora box for the future. And I'm finishing with something which is not very usual in politics. This is technology. Technology is a very, very specific nowadays, because whoever is involved in the technological improvement is aware that technology can be even bigger threat, not something for good, but for bad, for the human beings, than simple politics and political interests. Technology is developing so fast, and sometimes I'm thinking whether technology is going to be out of any control in the future. As a young student of psychology on the Belgrade University in Yugoslavia, in that time we started to work on artificial intelligence. That was in the 1970s. Nowadays, we have a very specific outcome of artificial intelligence. We have an impact of artificial intelligence in mobile telephony, in the different science, but also in politics. We are not thinking carefully about influence of artificial intelligence and digitalization. We are not thinking about human beings in that respect carefully. We are simply allowing new technologies to conquer the whole world because we are happy, because we are more able to communicate, we are more able to earn money, but at the same time, this is the other side of such development. I'm finishing with that sentence. Uncontrolled exposure of the young human beings, kids, to the digital information, which is happening every day in every country. Look, young people looking mobile, being totally impressed. This is kind of hypnosis. But uncontrolled exposure of their brain to the digital information can destroy the parts of their brain, in terms of physiology, in terms of functioning. Empathy that we need is very important regarding solving conflicts and understanding other phenomena in other countries. But empathy is in the dangerous situation regarding that kind of attack coming from the digital information. Thank you very much for your attention.